everyone, and welcome to the Week 7 edition of NFL Soundbytes. I'm Tom Moore, and as always, I'm joined by former NFL linebacker and now game day color analyst for the Minnesota Vikings, Pete Bercich. Well, Pete, you just got a week off from the rigors of the NFL, as all the Viking players enjoyed a bye week at the same time you did. When you were a player, though, I got to ask you, from your recollections, what was the most enjoyable activity you did with your teammates when you had time off? Or maybe what was the most unusual thing you did with them when you got a week off on a bye?
Well, it depends on when it happened in the fall. I mean, sometimes you got most time we spend it going back and seeing family, and then every once in a while, if it's late enough in the fall, you can go hunting or, do some things like that. So I remember going hunting with Matt Burke and a few of the other guys up in Alexandria one year. I mean, it all depended on, what time of the year it was, but it was just good to get away. I mean, a lot of guys like to travel if you have some time, and traveling can be hectic and everything like that, but it's nowhere near as stressful as having to play the game. So I think it's just good for everyone to get away a little bit. And I think with the beginning of the season, with how things have gone with the Vikings, that these players are heading home, heading to different spots, and they're probably attracting a lot more attention wherever they go because of the start.
You talk about hunting with people like Matt Burke. Were there adult beverages involved here, and anything strange happened?
I do remember one time. I mean, we went up there and we took over a bar basically, and some of Matt Burke's stuff ended up on the ceiling. And then I remember waking up the next day after a few adult beverages and reading that I was going to start that weekend because Dwayne Rudd was hurt. We were playing Washington, and so I didn't partake in half of the day as I needed to get some rest to make sure I was okay for the rest of the week. Yeah, we let our hair down a little bit. It was a lot of fun.
Well, nothing wrong with that. Talk about letting the hair down. Now they come back. It's back to work for the Vikings. They go into Philadelphia as the only unbeaten team in the NFL still. And meanwhile, after a fast start, the Eagles, they've stubbed their toe a little bit with a couple of straight losses. And I'm curious, from what you see of the Eagles and what you know of the Vikings, what can the Vikings expect from a slightly wounded opponent when they get there at Lincoln Financial Field this Sunday?
Well, I think exactly that. I mean, whenever you're looking at a team that's had a couple losses in a row and they want to get back on track, I mean, the focus is there. You definitely, you don't want to lose them back to back, but 3 in a row, that kind of opens up a whole nother can of worms as to, how good is the team, or they, is it, they just got lucky in the beginning. I mean, the conversation does shift a little bit with the number of losses, but, a good quality football team. They did lose to a division opponent in Washington, so that tells you something. I mean, Washington, when teams play other teams in the division, they know each other very, very well. So, not surprising that those games are close. It's not a huge red flag when you lose one of those, because those things can all happen. So, they're stumbling a little bit. I think some teams have done some things to them on defense to kind of open things up a little bit, and so hopefully the Vikings will find a way to at least be efficient in the run, so we can open up some of that play action passing and having Bradford going back to Philadelphia. I think it's overrated when you say a guy's going back to where he played, but he did spend some time there this year, so he does have a lot of familiarity with the personnel. Maybe not necessarily the scheme per se, but definitely with the personnel.
It's funny, you mentioned Bradford obviously being there in the preseason. He effectively had won that job as going to be the starter, and now they got highly touted rookie Carson Wentz starting. They're doing pretty well, but you mentioned that. You don't know if you say it's kind of overrated when they go back, but what are the emotions when a player goes back to a city, when he's left them, especially in Bradford's case, because he actually landed in a team that was a good landing spot for him?
It depends. I mean, before the game, you just got to be careful not to say hi to too many people. I mean, there's the players and the equipment managers and the coaches and, and everybody else there. I don't think the two teams, or at least Bradford, left on bad terms. So you just got to be careful on that. But Bradford's a veteran, so I don't think there's that much of a worry there.
When you look at Bradford, he's obviously the starter now in Minnesota, after that gruesome season-ending injury to Teddy Bridgewater. And I wondered, Pete, with you faced kind of a similar situation in '98 when you played, and you had starter Brad Johnson. He went down with a broken leg, and Randall Cunningham went in the rest of the way for the Vikings. Now, based on that experience you had, is Bridgewater a complete afterthought to this team right now, or is he still part of their success?
Oh, I'm sure he's still part of the team, per se. Have they moved on mentally? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's one thing I think that players don't always realize, is that they're not everything. I mean, you look at the players that this team lost. You lose your quarterback, and then right afterward, you lose the best running back in the league, so to speak. So any player who thinks that the team, that they are the team, or that the be-all, end-all of the team, or that any player is irreplaceable, that's not the case. It's a team game still, and that's kind of the rule. That's kind of the lesson that you learn while you're playing, is that the show will go on, and it will go on without you. And unlike in basketball or maybe baseball and some of the other sports, any team can get by without their superstar, especially if you're playing as a good team, playing together as a team, and doing the right things. I mean, you look at the Vikings defensively, and you try to say, okay, who's the star? Who's the guy? Who do you stop? Well, you look at the numbers. I mean, there's a lot of guys out there. I mean, Everson Griffin and Harrison Smith and Anthony Barr and Linval Joseph. I mean, there's a lot of depth and width to the quality of the defense. And I think offensively, minus our offensive line, which is pretty nicked up, you pick up Jake Long at tackle, and hopefully they'll find out this week whether or not he can go, if he's in condition enough. But I mean, geez, there's another number one overall draft pick, and all you're looking to do is get 2/3 of a season out of the guy. So, no one guy is the entire team, and that's where the experience, I think, of Norv Turner helps out as well, is that he's coached and called and had about every offensive scheme there is. So he definitely has a big playbook in his head, and he can tailor what the offense wants to do to the talent that he has. And with Bradford, this offense has changed. I mean, we'll see how much more he gets, guys like Adam Thielen into the game plan and people like that. So he has tools. Jerick McKinnon, very versatile. I think these versatile players that the Vikings have will be more important to this team going forward. That's just, than maybe a guy like Adrian Peterson, who's as good as they come, but is about as one-dimensional of a player as they come.
You remember your own words. You said you don't think you're a superstar. Anything can happen. You're not the team. Remember, you're one laryngitis bout away from you being on the bench and me doing the color analysis on Sunday. So be careful, Pete.
I know, and that's. But you know that going into it, right? And so when you're in there, you give it hell, and if you're gonna go out in a ball of flames, man.
There you go. You look at this team being 5-0, and you played on that '98 Viking team. They went 15-1 overall, started out 7-0. When you look at them coming off a bye, only undefeated team, feeling good about themselves, how does Coach Mike Zimmer keep the players focused and guard against that overconfidence that results in a flat performance?
Well, I don't think, if you have the right guys, that I don't know if that's necessarily an issue. Remember in '98, we just kept on doing our thing, and you win one and then two. I mean, we won all 4 preseason games. I remember that year, and then we won the first 7 games. And so, I mean, you're 11 weeks into the season, so to speak, and the rookies had never even lost a football game in the NFL. I mean, how rare is that? It doesn't happen too often. But like with anything else, I mean, these guys are professionals too, and when you go in and you play a team and you come in as the undefeated team, then they know that they don't want to get embarrassed. They know that they don't want Randy Moss and Chris Carter, Jake Reed, and the rest of those guys hanging 450 yards of passing. So teams are a little bit more apt to take gambles, to do different things, and every week, that's why you line up and play the game on any given Sunday. That's how that phrase started. That if you're not 100% on your game, and if the Vikings aren't continuing to follow the formula for success, which has been low-scoring defense, very good special teams, and on the positive side of the plus-minus, then yeah, I mean they can lose a game. How many? Who knows? But to go undefeated is, after you win 5 in a row, you look at the schedule and say, well, you know what? I don't think we're going to lose to anybody. But odds are, I mean, if you're a gambling man, yeah, they're going to lose a game or two at some point, and we'll see how it goes and to whom it is. But right now, man, they're a good, solid football team.
I'll tell you what, you played 8 years in the NFL, and you were coach for 3 years as well in the NFL, also coaching the linebackers. You roll into Philadelphia. It won't be the first time you've ever been there. I know you played in college in the old Vet Stadium. They play in Lincoln Financial Field. Those fans out in Philadelphia can be tough at times. And understand, lots of people in Philadelphia are listening to you this week, Pete. I'm curious if you want to give them your background, your understanding of what life was like at the old Vet Stadium.
Oh, well, the Vet, I played there in college, and I remember I was at Notre Dame. We played Navy, and I remember we had our whites on, and it was raining, it was wet, and sliding on the turf or falling on the turf, you get up and you were yellow from all the chew spit and everything else that was already in the turf. And I coached with Chuck Knox Jr., who was with Philly when Ray Rhodes was out there. And I mean, I know they had a jail, they had a judge, and they put the garbage outside, and it wouldn't get picked up till Monday. And so Chuck was, when those guys would come in early on Monday morning, the coaches, there'd be rats running around all over the place. I mean, it was a tough place to play, and it still is. I mean, the fans in Philadelphia, my goodness, they're as dedicated as you're going to see. I mean, you go into Chicago, you're going to see a lot of middle fingers. You ride into Philadelphia, you may just get a full moon from a guy standing next to his 7-year-old kid. So it's always an adventure riding in on the buses. You know what I mean? When you get to drive through the parking lot. No, trust me, they parade you around good. So everybody gets a good look at you. Everybody gets a chance to let you know what they think of you and everything else. And it's always something to look forward to. I mean, that's a part of the game that I enjoy. I mean, trust me, it's nice that I'm on the other side of a plate glass window on a bus with police around. I mean, there's not a problem there, but it's still, it is something we all talk about, and looking forward to ride into Philly, especially under these conditions. Undefeated, we've got their old quarterback. I mean, it's going to be cool.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, though, I keep on wondering about that planner for Lincoln Financial Field. They had the old jail cell in the Veterans Stadium. They didn't put it in Lincoln Financial Field, so you're pretty much on your own, Pete, there, so stay out of trouble.
Yeah, I guess they don't bother taking people to jail anymore. They just take care of them in the facility itself. You know what I mean?
Yeah, never heard of again.
No, Now I remember when I was coaching. I think it was 2006 or 2005 when we went into Green Bay and won the wild card game, and our next game was out in Philly. I had some friends of mine who the night before the game decided to go out to there's a bar right across the street over where the Phillies play. And there's about 3 or 4 of them. They walked in there with their Viking stuff on, and as soon as they walked in, the music stopped, and they were kindly asked to leave. So, we up in Minnesota, you think of rivalries and the Vikings and the Packers, and yeah, it's a big one. But you see, at the game, you see a young guy and his girlfriend. One's a Packer fan, one's a Viking fan. They're holding hands. I mean, everybody gets along pretty well, but you get to Philadelphia and Chicago and some places like that. If you're not wearing green and white or green and silver and black or whatever, they're not interested in being your friend. They're not interested in talking to you, holding your hand. In fact, they'll even tell you what they think of you. But you love it. I mean, that's the thing, passion. That's what you love about the game. And fans in Philly, man, they've got it. Holy cow.
Sure do. And, this Eagle team, really on paper, when you look at it, they're very similar to the Vikings. I mean, they're the number 6 defense right now, a similar offense to Minnesota. The passing stats are almost exactly the same. With that in mind, what worries you about this Eagle team? Obviously, we talked about they lost a couple, but what is it that worries you most about them being able to stop the Vikings?
Well, they have a pretty good, solid defensive front. No question about that. I mean, and it's, they're going to be able to stop the run against us and make our offense, really one-dimensional. I mean, that's the thing that you get concerned about. But they started out with a bang, and I think they've come back down to reality a little bit over the last couple of weeks. A good solid defensive team. I mean, they kind of have that back in the days. They've had a good solid defense for quite some time. They've had a lot of really good players come through there, and they have a few of them up front, especially on that defense.
That Viking defense is also tough for the Eagles to face with 13 turnovers created. It's really the main reason the team is undefeated. What do you expect them to do on Sunday to rattle the young Carson Wentz? And when they do they need to be wary of what the Eagles are doing on offense to try to counteract that?
Well, yeah, you look at a young quarterback, and one of the things that you have to do with a young quarterback is you gotta make him think that he's getting one thing, and then you got to give him another. And we have a lot of veterans in the back end on this defense, and I think that they can do that. The hold the disguise to get that going is key. And I really do think that the Vikings can do that. So, I mean, they're gonna have their hands full. I mean, Ryan Matthews is a good, solid player. So you're going to have to make sure that you have him accounted for, and just hope that you can keep Carson Wentz off his game a little bit. And you do that by making him think he's seeing one thing and then giving him another. So when you have success as a quarterback or anyone in the NFL, it may happen for a couple weeks. You may get 2, 3, 4 weeks where you're really doing well, things are going well, or you're doing a certain thing well. Week after week, the other teams will see it, and then finally someone will find a way to stop it, and then once it's stopped, it's on film, and everybody else is going to copy it. So whatever Carson was doing well early in the year to be so effective, teams maybe have figured him out a little bit. And to be a good pro, and that's where veteran quarterbacks come in, is they usually know when you do A, eventually you're going to have to go to B and then go to C. Whereas for a rookie, he's still, trying to just execute A, and he has no idea what B and C are. So, but he's had a great start for a young man in a tough town. I mean, holy cow! You just got to take advantage of that inexperience, man. You just got to keep hammering on that, and I think the Vikings can do that.
You talk about hammering. You're a defensive guy. And you always hear about, sacks are a big thing, but it's the cumulative effect of the hits. For a rookie quarterback like that, I mean, what is that impact of the hits? Is it force him to rush the ball more, force him to rush the reads, tuck the ball under quicker and run? What's it do?
Well, it's really, I think, for the hits on a veteran quarterback are even more important because they know where they end up going. They have those. They have that in the back of their head, what it can happen and how bad it can be. Where young guys, sometimes what you don't know is a good thing, right? But getting physical with the quarterback is huge, and part of it's just getting them off their timing. And that's one other thing that the Vikings have been very successful at is on these offenses that have a lot of timing in their passing game. They've been disruptive. They've been disruptive up front with the pass rush. They've been disruptive with the receivers on the outside and not letting them just free release. So interrupting that timing of that offense is been key, I think, for the Viking defense. And hopefully they'll be able to do that again with Philly. But whenever you can get pressure on a quarterback like that, it's huge, and it's hard to these days. This passing game is different. Everything's different. Ball gets out quickly. But hey, you got to find a way.
One thing the Vikings have to do is the run game. It's ranked dead last in the NFL, averages just 70 yards a game through 5 contests. And Adrian Peterson's still out for at least another month. What do you think Norv Turner can do on the offensive side to make the run game more of a threat?
Well, it's mixing it up. And you look at screens and you look at some other things, the whip screens and other ways you can get the ball in the hands of the running back. Those become like long handoffs. So those are good things. And that's, I think, what they're going to do more. I think Jerick McKinnon, if he does a couple things well, he's a good receiver out of the backfield. He's a good cutback runner. But he's also a very good pass protector. He can pick up guys on the blitzes. So Jerick McKinnon, pretty well-rounded running back. And you go with Norv Turner, an experienced quarterback, they're going to find ways to get guys open, at least get him open. I think one thing Norv Turner has done real well is using personnel groups and different formations to put defenses in bad positions. I mean, you come out with 2 receivers on either side, but you put the running back or the tight end on the outside and you put the receivers inside. Well, the quarterback knows right away if he's got man or zone, depending on where the corners line up. And, if you get 2 corners walked out on the 2 outside receivers, then you've got your wide receivers on the inside hooked up against linebackers and safeties in coverage. So he does a lot of that, and it makes it easier on the quarterback. You just know with a guy that has that much experience dealing with formations and teams and things like that he'll be able to help out the quarterback and help out the offense by doing that.
Absolutely. Well, this weekend it's 2 NFC strong teams in Philadelphia, Minnesota. Just wanted to ask you a quick question. What you see in the NFC when you see the likes of Atlanta and Dallas and Seattle and Washington, who is rising to the cream of the crop to challenge Minnesota and Philadelphia? Or do you think, in fact, one of these 2 teams or both these 2 teams are the cream of the crop in the NFC?
Well, yeah, Philly's always going to be, Philly's up there. I think they're going to go as their quarterback goes, and they can only expect him to get better as a young quarterback. Dallas, look at Dallas. They have a rookie running back and a rookie quarterback that they're hitching their star to right now. And that dog and pony show will slow down. There's no question about it. This is the NFL. Teams will figure you out. So I think Dallas will come back to reality here pretty soon, and it could be a team like Philadelphia that that does that. So the other teams I think that you saw that might have a chance are they played against each other over the weekend, and that's Seattle and Atlanta. I mean, Atlanta has a very, very strong, very, very solid offense. It kind of took a half off. The first half was all Seattle, and then the second half was all Atlanta. So, and they came up short on a kind of a questionable call as well. So, that game could have probably gone. It's going to go to the home team wherever that one's pretty much played. So, those are the teams right now that, as we approach the midpoint of the season, and again, we're not even at the midpoint of the season, but those are the teams that everybody's talking about.
I'll tell you what, as we close out our conversation today, and I want you to keep in mind, you got a lot of people in Minnesota listening to you, a lot of people in Philadelphia listening to you this week. What is your expected outcome of this game?
Yeah, I mean, you have the Vikings defense. There's one thing that's been consistent is that they've been keeping opponents off the board. You look at the Vikings, they use turnovers and special teams to help accent the offense. But I still think, Philadelphia will be hard pressed to put. It's the race to 21. I mean, when the Vikings have won 15 games in a row and they've scored 21 or more points, and they've also won, I believe it's somewhere around 11 or 12 in a row when the defense has kept teams below 20. So it's the race to 21, and so I think this game will be a 24-17, 24-13 type game with the Vikings coming out on top.
All right, remember, you just picked the Vikings, and your bus has still got to get into Philadelphia. So everybody take a good look at Pete when he gets in there. And Pete, that brings us to the end of this edition of NFL Soundbytes. And for the fans, don't forget to follow Pete and his daily thoughts in the NFL on Twitter, @Pete Bercich. And next week, we've got a couple of fun guests, Pete. Just a quick soundbite on them. We've got Viking special teamers Mitch Berger and Chris Walsh joining us. Talk to me about your initial thought of those two guys before they join us.
Well, those two were Batman and Robin back in the day. You're thinking about how exciting can a punter and a number 4 wide receiver be. Well, let me tell you, these two guys they're a riot, and I just can't wait to get them reunited on the phone because there's going to be some good stories of the old off the record bit. I think they're old enough now that no one can press charges for things that they've done. I think we're past the statute of limitations on most of what they accomplished. So. We'll see, but it's going to be great to talk to those two again.
Sounds good. We'll get the Twitter engine all fired up for that. But until then, for Pete Bercich, I'm Tom Moore. So long, everyone.